Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari A to Z Flashback, a series of explorations of the 150 games that make up Atari Flashback Classics for Nintendo Switch. Today's game is Super Challenge Baseball. This was a 1982 release for Atari 2600, published through Mattel's M Network. And like most of the other M Network games, this was a port of an Intellivision game. Specifically, in this case, it was a port of the 1980 Intellivision title Major League Baseball. The original Intellivision version had an MLB license, but the game featured no team or player names or likenesses or anything like that, so the license was dropped for subsequent re-releases, including this one on Atari 2600. Now, the Intellivision version was regarded as one of the best baseball games at the time, and Intellivision's advertising often put their game up against Atari's home run to make the Atari 2600 look stupid and the Intellivision look much better. The question is, how well does it work on the Atari 2600? So let's go find out. Let's go play Super Challenge Baseball.
Okay, welcome back once again to Atari Flashback Classics. Now, I gotta confess, I've been putting these next two games off for a little while. So I've ended up recording both of these in a bit of a rush, hence the lack of face cam in these ones. They are both two-player only games, and basically the main reason I've been putting them off is that I didn't really want to have to inflict them on my wife, so I tried to find some other people to help out with them, but you know, it's a bit of a hard sell for most people. So we ended up having to record these on the day that I would normally put out an Atari A to Z Flashback video. But anyway, here we are. As always, we're going to take a look at the manual first of all. So we're starting with Super Challenge Baseball. Here we are, Super Challenge Baseball, instructions for 2 players, and 2 players only, I should add. The object of the game is to score the most runs in 9 innings or extra innings to a decision. Most professional baseball rules apply, 3 strikes for an out, 4 balls for a walk. First 2 foul balls count as strikes. Each player controls an 8-man team, 1 team fields while the other team is up to bat. Home runs, force outs, double and triple plays can all be made. Batter up! Okay, so here is the screen layout for the Atari 2600 version, because remember this was also an Intellivision game before it was an Atari 2600 game. Up at the top we got the home score in red and the visitor score in blue. Looks a bit more green there, doesn't it? But yeah, it's supposed to be blue. The 4 numbers underneath we have balls and then strikes and then outs and then what inning we're on. And then you've just got the diamond underneath. So when you're batting, you control the batter. When the pitch is right, swing away by pushing the red button, so the A button on the Nintendo Switch controller. Timing on your swing determines where the ball goes. All hits are grounders, so the batter cannot fly out, not even on fouls. I don't know what that means because I don't know baseball well enough. If you play the more difficult game, you control the lead base runner, so you can steal bases. You can only steal bases on difficulty level A. I looked up what steal bases means. It basically means sort of running when you kind of sort of possibly aren't supposed to, but I don't know. But yeah, anyway, you can only do that if you set the batter's difficulty onto A for advanced instead of B for beginner. Otherwise all the running is done automatically and all you have to do as a batter is hit the ball. Okay, for fielding controls in this are quite complicated and, to be perfectly honest, don't really work very well, as you'll see when we come to play. But here's how they work. So for different types of pitches, you push different directions, and while the ball is in the air, you can actually move it around slightly. You can sort of bend it and curve it by pushing a direction while it's in the air. Now, while you're fielding, so while you're trying to catch the ball or throw it to baseman or that sort of thing, you hold the red button down while you push the joystick up, down, left or right. Push joystick once for infielder, twice for outfielder. Okay. Right. We recorded our gameplay before I'm recording this introduction here, so I'm seeing what we did wrong now. I misread this beforehand and thought you had to press the button twice, but no, what you have to do is hold down the button and push the direction twice. Right, that makes sense. That explains why we struggled so much. Anyway, yeah. So those are the basics of the controls. And then it just provides a bit of information on the rest of the game. A few tips here. Baseball is a game of defense. With a little practice on your fielding, you'll have a tremendous advantage. If, however, you don't really know how to control the fielders, as we didn't, then you will have a tremendous disadvantage. Watch where the ball is travelling, pick out the fielder closest to the spot where you expect the ball to drop and get control of that fielder. That is the part we struggled with. We found it so difficult to respond quickly to the ball that we just couldn't select the right pitches in time, which made it very, very difficult to actually catch people out and also to actually throw it to the right bases as well. So, yeah. Anyway, that is the manual for Super Challenge Baseball for Atari 2600. I'm going to disappear now and hand you over to what I would normally call Future Pete, but it's actually past Pete now because I recorded the gameplay before I recorded this intro and it's all getting terribly complicated. So let's just say we're going to hand over to some pre-recorded footage now, and I will commentate over how the match between my wife and I went. Spoilers, it wasn't great. Anyway, let's go watch. Okay, here we are with Super Challenge Baseball. Currently, actually I forget who was in which position to begin with. I think I was fielding and then my wife was batting. Or possibly the other way around. No, it was the other way around to begin with, because my wife was having some struggles with batting. You may recall from when we looked at the manual in the introduction that the fielding controls of this are a little odd. So in order to pitch, you push a direction, which we will... There we are. And then the batter just has to press the fire button on the joystick, or the A button on the Nintendo Switch controller, in order to hit it. And then the timing of the hit determines where the ball goes. And you'll see, just like in Real Sports Baseball for 2600, you can fling the ball around between the different people on the field at any point and run around and have a jolly good time. So pushing down just flings it straight down the middle, which gives you a nice sort of easy way of approaching it. I'm onto first base there. My wife has picked up the ball and is politely passing it back to the pitcher, but failed to catch it with the pitcher. So she is now flinging it back by tapping the fire button by itself. We both really struggled with this as we tried to play this. We had a real problem trying to figure out how to control the different fielders. In particular, we found it almost impossible to select the outfielders up at the top of the screen. And the reason for that I've already mentioned, is because we misunderstood the instructions. We thought that you had to press the fire button twice, when what you actually have to do is hold down the fire button and push a direction twice, which maybe makes a bit more sense. But either way, yeah, we didn't really figure that out as we went through. So, I was sort of getting the hang of batting at this point, because batting is dead easy. All you need to do is just press the button. As we saw when we looked at the manual, if you put the batting team's difficulty on A for advanced, you then have to manually control the lead base runner. And that also means that you can steal bases. However, the default is B for beginner. And so all you have to do is hit the ball, and then all the running is done automatically. So you'll see as this goes on that we quickly run into a bit of an issue, which is that if the player on the fielding team doesn't really get to grips with how the fielding controls work, which is entirely possible, as we can see. If the player on the fielding side doesn't get to grips with the fielding controls, then it's entirely possible for one innings to go on for a very long time indeed, which means that the batting side can score loads and loads of runs, build up a pretty much unassailable lead, and yeah, well, that's pretty much what happens. So there you see another run in the bank. As the blue team struggles to select the player they want. Like I say, this wasn't just a matter of not knowing the controls. It's the controls are simply quite cumbersome generally, and they just don't feel very responsive, which is part of the problem. And sometimes you try and do something and it just wouldn't do it. So you'd be trying to select someone to catch the ball and get someone out, and it just wouldn't work for whatever reason, and that's very frustrating. And I suspect that probably wouldn't have been an issue on the Intellivision version, but it's not altogether uncommon for these M-Network Atari 2600 ports to be inferior in some way to their Intellivision counterparts. Because the Intellivision was a more powerful system. It was capable of better things. It was capable of better graphics, better sounds. It had more flexibility of control thanks to its weird disc controller with the keypad underneath. I mean, that wasn't an ideal method of control by any means, but for something like this, it makes a lot more sense. What you've seen a couple of times there is the fact that you can do some absolutely ridiculously outlandish pitches in this and just bend the ball into places that aren't even anywhere vaguely near the batter. So here we are again. My wife's still in control of the blue team, having a bit of trouble selecting the appropriate people. See there, she wanted to select one of the dudes up at the top, but she just couldn't. Now, as I say, granted we were getting the controls wrong, but even when we got it right, it didn't feel entirely consistent as to what was happening. It felt very difficult to take control of the one we wanted to take control of. It was much easier to accidentally select one of the basemen than it was one of the outfielders. And as you can see, that made our fielding efforts less than optimal, shall we say. See, what we were trying to do here is we were trying to work out the controls, and so we were just controlling the pitcher and pressing the fire button, hoping that we could take control of the person we wanted to take control of. And it just wasn't doing it. So selecting the baseman, no problem. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Selecting the outfielders, who knows? Who knows how this works? Well, we do now, because I've read the manual properly, but it's not intuitive. It's not intuitive. It's not something you'll stumble across by accident, let's put it that way. And while that might make for a more tactically interesting baseball game, in comparison to some of the other baseball games on Atari 2600, it's not nearly as intuitive, it's not nearly as immediate. It means that both players will need to have sort of read the manual before you play the game. Which is fine under certain circumstances, but if you just want to have like a quick game with someone, spending a bit of time reading the manual with them is not the best way to start your session. Now, I think by this point what we've done is we've swapped controller, so my wife is now in control of the batting team and I've taken control of the fielding team. Because I had some suspicions about the control scheme that I wanted to investigate for myself, and this innings wasn't ending anytime soon, so I thought the easiest thing to do would be to just swap places and see what happened. So there we are. So sort of having got a slight handle on how you're supposed to play this, I managed to actually get one of the red team out. Throw the ball, hit the ball, select the man, and then we started to encounter this brilliant but also awful bug. So you saw there that the pitcher just zapped into the bottom left corner of the screen for no apparent reason. Like, we didn't press anything, he just zonked right there into the corner of the screen. We have no idea why. It just happened. That's what happened. And there, it happened again. You saw that, but then he zapped back to the middle of the screen. So we're not sure if that's... I mean, I suspect that probably isn't a game mechanic, but yeah, I don't know what causes that or why it happens or anything. Anyway, so we swapped sides at this point, but I kept fielding because my wife was struggling with it and getting a bit frustrated, so I kept her on the batting for now. And I continued to pitch. And so the one upside of this is that batting is a lot more straightforward than some of the other baseball games we've seen. It's a lot easier to do than in both home run and real sports baseball. It's a lot more forgiving with the timing. And it's also a lot easier to judge visually, I found, as well. So that's one positive side of this game. There we are, another person out. The one thing I was starting to find a little bit tricky at this point with the fielding was the fact that when you throw the ball doesn't actually go that fast. So there's no sort of option to throw the ball with more power but less accuracy, for example. And so you really have to make sure that you're ahead of the base runners if you want to actually get one of them out, which is a bit tricky. Again, we swapped sides here, so I remained fielding because I was sort of gradually getting to grips with the controls at this point. And my wife was getting a decent feel for batting as well. So, I mean, by this point, neither of us were having what I'd call a lovely time, but we were both at least getting a feel for how the game works, which is better than nothing. And there's that bug again. Like, he grabbed the ball and then just zapped all the way over there. Like, why did that happen? Why did that happen? I have no idea why that happened, because he was the guy on first base. And so he should have been sticking around first base and been able to run back to first base and maybe get someone out. But no, that is not what happens when the game feels like it shouldn't happen. See there, I wanted to select an outfielder and I couldn't. And that caused the Reds to score a run on me. There, on the other hand, I still managed to get someone out with less than stellar reaction times. And the ball there, a foul ball rather. Yep, again, same problem. No one there to receive it. Yeah, this match was a travesty, a real travesty. And I hasten to add, you probably guessed this from the timer on the video, but we certainly didn't play all 9 innings on this one. We just played a few innings to see how much of a feel we could get for the game in the space of it. There again, why, how, what is the reason for this? I don't know. I really don't know. But anyway, yes, we certainly didn't play the whole match of this because, I mean, we could have done that. We might have got a slightly better grasp of what was going on by the time we finished, but we didn't really see the point of playing 9 innings of not really understanding what was going on or having a feel for the controls. But I think we learned something while we were playing. And I think if we tried it again, we would be able to play a little bit better. But the question is, would we want to play again? I can see this having some potential to be fun if both players are on a kind of equal skill level and both players know how the controls work and everyone understands entirely how the game works. But if the two of you are of mismatched skill, or if someone doesn't really know how baseball works or anything like that, it's not the sort of game you can sort of pick up and play casually in the same way that, say, a good soccer game can be. And that's partly the faultless sport. But it's also a more complex game to simulate as well, because you're trying to manage multiple people all at the same time. So I think in the grand scheme of Atari 2600 baseball games, this is probably one of the better ones. It's certainly better than Home Run. And it's probably better than Real Sports Baseball, because it doesn't seem quite as prone to the throw, grab, throw out strategy that is possible in Real Sports Baseball. But anyway, that is the end of that for now. That is Super Challenge Baseball for Atari 2600. So I'll just leave you and say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.